Hello and welcome back to Wonderland Asylum. We're back today with stage 2 of the Hachette Partworks release of Build the U96 U-boat. So, if you remember, in stage 1 we made the front port part of the bow, and we also made both the port and starboard upper torpedo bay doors. So let's see what we're going to be doing in stage 2. Okay, so these are the parts for stage 2. We have the lower torpedo doors. We have bags of screws. Now this is what I mentioned last time. These screws aren't labelled, and this one has both silver screws and black screws in it. So all you can really do is look at the parts listing, and what it tells you is you get 5 BM screws, so that must be them, and you get 3 BP screws, which must be them. So these then must be the AM screws, because you get 8 of them, and the bag of black screws here must be the AP screws. So it looks like the black ones are for plastic, the silver ones are for metal. But yeah, just be careful of that. It's not like Titanic where the bags are labelled. This is, again, as I keep saying, more akin to Bismarck, where they relied on you to kind of catch on to it more easily yourself and be able to guess, essentially, which is which. Now, in here we also have more kind of plastic bracket sections with some metal brackets, and we do have our first cable with a label. Now again, if you've built Bismarck or the Spitfire, you'll remember putting labels on cables. Again, Titanic's, I've got one of Titanic's wires here, they actually have the designation printed on it, whereas these ones you have to put the label on yourself. Again, we also have the actuator arms just in here. Again, I'll need to use my tweezers to get them out. And they're for the lower torpedo bay doors. And incidentally, that's what we're doing first. So I'll leave these pieces in their casing, and I need some of the AM screws. Now, they are the slightly smaller silver ones, I believe. Nope, they're the bigger silver ones, but you do get more of them. They come in this bag here. It's the BM screws that are in a bag with the BP screws. Again, get a couple of the AM screws out, because we're not going to be using all of them at once. So we need the door that's labelled DL, which is this one. And this one is labelled DR. And we need the bracket that's labelled the exact same. So again, the sprue cutters and cut the DL bracket from the sprue. As I mentioned last time, I have changed the head on my screwdriver now, so hopefully the screws will go in a bit more easily. They were quite tough last time. Okay, so taking one of the actuator arms. Again, there's an indent on one side. I'm not sure it makes a difference, but in the picture they've got the indent facing outwards, so I will do exactly the same. Then we put the bracket, looking like this, just over the top of it, and make sure it lines up with the screw hole. That's the tough bit, is making sure everything all lines up, because if it doesn't, you're going to have problems when you come to fit it all together. Now that looks good to me. So again, just putting in the screw. Oh, that's so much easier with a screwdriver head that isn't worn. Okay, again, just make sure that can still actuate, and it can. And then I do believe we're doing the exact same on the other side. So again, get it over, cut the bracket from its sprue. Again, that's the only bit I don't like, is you're essentially having to lie the pin on there like that and then try and hope it stays in place while you put the bracket over the top. So you kind of need three sets of hands, but you get there. Actually, I think it's probably easier to put the pin inside the plastic bracket, marry it up with a screw hole. No, it's apparently not, because it just fell straight back out, but nah, I'll try it again. I'll do it again that way. There you go. Again, make sure the bracket's lined up properly. Bring the screw in. And screw it down. Perfect. And that is the other side of the lower doors. Okay, so the next thing we need is this piece, looking just like that. It's labelled 2-11, and we're holding it this way up with this flat section here, and we're taking this metal bracket, holding it this way, and it lines up just there. And we're going to be putting 2 AP screws in here and here. And the AP screws are the black ones that come in this bag here. So again, just be careful, make sure you're using the correct screws to avoid any issues later on. Again, line the screw up. Just make sure got it got it the right way around, and it's into these two holes, the top and bottom holes rather than the left and right holes. So you're not going to be able to see too much because I'm having to maintain quite a good grip to get this to screw in. But again, you're screwing into plastic, so you don't need to be too firm with it. Just until it's tight is good enough, because what you do risk happening is if you screw into plastic too tightly, it'll go very, very tight, and then suddenly it'll go very, very loose, and you'll realise you're about to have a really, really bad time because you've stripped out the screw hole. So again, just screw them both in until they're tight, and that looks just like that. Next, what we're doing is taking this metal bracket here, it's labelled 2-6, and making sure it's facing this way with the brackets kind of pointing downwards, if you see what I mean. So they should be facing away, that flat section should be facing up, and then we get the screw piece here. Now making sure the bit with a flat end on it faces away, and thread that in slightly, just like that, because that is how the motor will actuate the, the doors. Okay, and once that's in, we need to get the bag with the 2 axles in it. They are both labelled 2-13, so it doesn't matter which one goes in either side. And what we do is slot them down into these holes here. Now they should slot in nice and move fairly freely, and they do. That's good. Okay, and now this is going to be another feat of superhuman, what would you call it, three-handedness. We need the other metal bracket just here with these two cap sections facing away, and you can see there are two sort of slots there, and they'll fit the tabs that are there, and that will go on just like that. Again, making sure the screw holes line up nicely. And these screws that are going in there, again, are AM screws, so I'm going to get them ready. But we're missing something. Missing something indeed. We need to take this assembly and put it in here. So the two axles, more or less, will go into these two holes, and that sort of indent is where that screw section will go. So picking it all up and making sure these brackets hang down either side nicely, just like that. Guide the axles into the holes, like so, and then fit this piece here, as I mentioned before, over the top, like that, to close it all in. And it should look just like that. And now from the other side, nice and convenient, we're going to secure it, as I mentioned, with the AM screws from the top here. I'll show you once I've got that one part way in. See what I mean? Screw goes in there like that. And what I'm going to do for the other side is again extend my screwdriver out just to make it a bit easier to get it in straight. Again, just tighten this side down a little bit more, because I was just focused on getting it in and securing the pieces together. But that's in just like that. There is a little bit of play there, but that's fine, because that piece needs to be free to move, because that's the bit the motor will turn, is that screw, and that will move this pivot up and down, as you can see there. That's how the doors will rotate. You can see already what I mean by this is so much more complex than anything we've done on Titanic. Or maybe that's just me. I don't know. Maybe it's just me that thinks that. Okay, now the next bit we need is this bracket just here, looking like that. It is labelled 2-10. And I believe it'll fit over these parts here, held in again by AP screws, which are the black ones from here. 3 of them. So I need 3 more screws out this bag. Very nice. So I think you can see here that these issues are going to take a bit longer than the Titanic ones. My Titanic issues tend to be quite short. Or some of them do. But this is obviously going to take that little bit longer. But again, there's something else we need to put in there. And it is part 1-2 and 1-3. So we need these pieces. Now, if I can see which is which, I believe, yes. I'm just trying to see which one goes in which way and which one goes in the other. The only real point of reference you have is these brackets. Now that is as it will be facing the front, so this is the right side, and it'll go in just here into those holes right at the front of the bracket. And then the left side goes in just next to it, port and starboard, then making sure these stay in the bottom holes, not like that. Line up the top of the bracket, making sure it captures both pivot points, like that. Well, didn't capture that one, did it? Okay. So again, probably easier to get it into the top piece first and then feed it into the bottom. And there we go. That is both doors in the hinge, so to speak. And now that gets held together, as I said before, with AP screws. 3 of them. That's one in, so hopefully it should hold it all together while I get the other 2 in place. Because I'll cry if not. And that's the last thing you want to see. Okay. And there we go. That's that bracket screwed on, and that is the lower torpedo bay doors. Or in fact, no, that's the upper torpedo bay doors fitted. Perfect. Ooh, now this bit looks like fun. We need 2 of the BM screws, which are the silver ones that are in here. Just dropped one onto my mat and I can't see where it went. Typical. I know it's on the mat because I saw it fall on my mat. Looks like I'm going to have to make use of the spare one. And what we're doing is into these bracket holes. Now, this point has to go underneath the bracket. See, just like that. And line up the hole on each side. And then put in the BP screw. That's that one in, and look where my screw went. It went there. And then, just in exactly the same way, screwing in the second arm. It's actually very, very, my goodness, this screw doesn't want to go in. Either that or it's my hand doesn't want to stay still long enough to let it. I've got a bit of a handshake on today, I'm not sure why. Probably because I haven't eaten yet today. We're still quite early doors in the morning. For falling out Wendy's. I'm not getting anywhere at all with this, am I? Right, so make sure the arm is lined up. Screw in the hole. And there we go. Now that should hold these in place just nicely, just like that, and obviously that'll marry up with the front of the ship. Now I think the next thing we need to do is turn it over and do the exact same on the bottom. Yep, indeed, I am 100% correct. But hopefully, it's this bracket here we're going to be using. Hopefully it'll go in slightly more easily. So I'll get all the bits and pieces, all the screws that we need together, and I'll be back in just a tick. Okay, so we've got all the bits we need. The first thing we need to get is the bottom left and bottom right doors. Now they will fit in to either side. Now obviously that bit goes to what will be the bottom, and bear in mind that this part is now upside down, so you don't want to put them in the wrong way because you'll just have to come back and fix them. So hopefully, because of the way this is positioned, these will sit a bit more easily to go in. Again, capture both top pins with the bracket and put the bracket down over the screw holes. There are also two tabs to help you secure the bracket, but it's going to be, again, awkward to try and keep these pins captured at the bottom and the top while you're lining everything up. I've got the two of them in there, and there we go. All done. Perfect. I've got one of the AP screws already on my screwdriver. You don't want to be able to fiddle about trying to grab a screw and get it on your screwdriver while holding all this together. Not fun. But with that in, should be a much easier task to get the other two in. And again, be aware it is plastic into plastic, so you don't want to be too harsh. There we go. And now, just as we did with the top bits, we're going to line these holes in the bracket up with these holes here, like so, and put in one of the BM screws. Okay, so again, line it up just like that. If it's not lined up, it just means the screw will not go in. But that is going to be your only hint that there is a problem. Now the top ones weren't too bad to line up, but the bottom ones are slightly looser in their bracket. But you'll feel it once it starts to go in. That's that. And just the exact same with the next one. Line it up. Make sure the holes are aligned. And screw it in. Just like that. And that is what you're left with. How awesome is that? And again, what will happen is that point is turned, it'll push that down, which will push these axles out and allow the doors to open. Conversely, when it turns the other way, it'll pull this further out and pull it closed. Fantastic. Again, as I say, a lot more complex than if you've been watching my Titanic build. But the next thing we need is the cable and the label. Now these I tend to keep for wire tidying purposes. Whether I'll ever use them or not, I have a drawer full of them now, but this is labelled M1. Now I assume that means it'll be port number 1 on the main board. Just from dealing with previous Hachette builds. It doesn't matter what way you put it on, as long as you can read it and as long as you'll understand what it means. So that's a bit of a mess, but it'll allow me to identify that cable, and that's the important part. And then we're plugging the side that doesn't have the label on it into this socket here on the control board for the motor. Now again, look at where the pins are and then look at where the holes are in the plug. It will only fit one way. Ah, now I have made a mistake here. I didn't notice that the ends were different. So what I'll need to do is take this label off. There you go. I'll leave that mistake in so that you don't do the same thing as me. In my haste, I didn't notice that the ends on the cable were different. I thought they were the same, but they're not. So what I'll need to do is put my tweezers in. Hopefully I'll be able to get this unstuck without ripping it. I've got it unstuck enough that I can slide it down to the other side of the cable closest to the big connector. So as you look at it, there's a small connector and a big connector. The big connector should have the label on it, the small connector goes into the motor. And again, look at the holes and the pins and slot it in gently because you don't want to break anything. And that should look just like that. Now, what we need is this bracket here, looking just like that. It is labelled 2-7, and we're taking the motor, and again, it doesn't matter which way around, and we're going to be screwing the motor onto this bracket with BP screws. So they are the long, thin black ones that came in the bag with the BM screws. So you only get 3, so I'm assuming this is the only use for these. Again, I keep referring to Bismarck because it's very, very similar. But if you built Bismarck, you'll know that these are the same kind of screws that we used to screw the motors to the brackets for Bismarck. Long and thin ones. Again, screw that down. Just enough that it holds the motor into place. And then screw in the other side. Just like that. Now you will want these screws to be nice and tight, obviously not so tight they're stripped, but you don't want the motor to be able to move in and out because that's going to require good engagement for the assembly to work properly. Okay. So the next thing we need is the final piece off of our sprue that came in issue 1. Clip and clop. Now again, there is a small burr off of there because it was difficult to get the sprue cutter in. So sand that smooth because you don't want anything catching on this thing at all, because if it does, you'll end up with a sticky mechanism and you don't want that. Okay, so just make sure you sand the edges smooth. And if you look, you can see there's a squared off piece. So this has to sit on like that, because I say that will turn and that's what will move the hinges back and forth. Okay, see what I mean? As that turns, it either spreads or pulls in those hinges. Okay, and the next thing we're doing is getting the motor. Now the cable should face to the bottom of the ship. You need to line it up with that cross section, and it goes in there just like that. That lined up quite nicely, first time actually, unusually. And then we need 2 of the AM screws. There we go. Should have got them out before I test fitted this, because I was expecting to have to adjust something, but no, not on this occasion. I normally do. Again, AM screw in the top. And once it's in just enough to hold it in, I'll put the other one in the bottom. Now this one may be slightly more difficult because of where the circuit board extends beyond the length of the motor. So it may be slightly more challenging to get this one in. It's not too bad. But that was why I did the other one first. In case you were wondering, probably not. Again, just make sure they're both tightened down nicely. And that is a motor assembly for the Torpedo Bay doors. And for the next trick, we need to bring over the piece of the bow we worked on last time, and along here we're going to be fitting this bracket. Now it will only go on one way, so if you try to put it on backwards or upside down it won't fit. It will only go in the way it's supposed to, and you can see there are indents there in the bracket that fit the pegs there. So line it all up, and it's going to be held in by the remaining AM screws. Okay, so again, line it all up. Get the AM screws in. First one. Now for the second one. Just like that. Perfect. Now I believe this may be a little bit fiddlier again, because what we're actually going to be doing is fitting the mechanism we've just created with the Torpedo Bay doors. We're going to be fitting it on here. Now I'm going to struggle to show you, but you can see in there are two screw holes. They're what we're going to be fitting to, and it's two of the AP screws that we're using to screw it down. Okay. So, what we do, I'm trying to see if the bracket goes in above or below. It goes in below. That bracket goes in below this piece here. And that's what I was trying to figure out, was how it was going to sit. That fits really nicely. Again, you can just see the two screw holes there. You're not going to be able to see me screwing it in, unfortunately. But just make sure everything is fitting correctly. Oh, missed the hole for the screw. The other one just goes in at the front. Just like that. And that is what that is looking like. Now they're not quite lined up because these doors are slightly open, but once you turn the motor, it'll push these out and they'll seal perfectly, because when they're open they fold in, not out, if that makes sense. But yeah, that is us for part 2. How amazing does that look? I mean, you can see now how much detail, how much engineering and everything goes into this. particularly in comparison to the stuff we've been doing on Titanic, but I'm just so impressed with that. It looks absolutely amazing, and as you can see, nothing left in the packet this time. So yeah, that is us for stage 2. Now, how much work was that? And that's only stage 1 and 2, but you can see there again, that's what the front is looking like. You can see those doors are slightly open, but when they're fully closed, they will extend and fill those holes. Just so chuffed. That looks so good. But yeah, that is stage 2. What's in stage 3? The other side of the bow. So we'll get to fit the other side, all the associated bracketry. We also get the test board and the battery box, which will allow us to test the doors. Oh, I'm so excited. I'm such a little boy. But yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, thanks as always, guys. Any feedback, comments, criticisms, concerns, pop them down below. Do leave me a like, because it helps out massively with the channel, and do subscribe to see the rest of the U96 and the rest of Titanic for now. But yeah, thanks again, guys, and as always, peace out, everyone.